confirmed today that February 1st is the day Americans will have to restart paying their student loans. 41 million people have benefited since payments have been paused in March of 2020. The Senate Majority Leader and Senator Elizabeth Warren said 89% of borrowers are unprepared to resume payments come February. They estimate that 9 million people will default on their loans. Ending student loan relief has far-reaching consequences for black college graduates who owe, on average, twice as much as their white counterparts. Over the last 20 years, the number of black people with a college degree has more than doubled, from 3 million to 6.7 million, according to the Brookings Institute. But, as the Wall Street Journal reported, that the overall household wealth for black college graduates in their 30s has dropped from 3 decades ago, in large part due to financial burdens from student debt. Millions have held out hope that the president would cancel student loans, as he promised, but today the White House press secretary said that's up to Congress.
The president has said in the past, April, that if a bill was sent to his desk on $10,000, he would sign that into law. There have been questions and asks about what executive authorities could be used. That has been under review. I don't have anything to report on that at this point in time.
Joining me now to discuss is Dr. Corneille West, activist, philosopher, and chair at Union Theological Seminary. Dr. West, how do you take this move by the White House to just say, we're not doing it, you're going to have to start paying back this debt? There's some people who believe that they have the authority to do this as an executive order on the Higher Education Act. What do you make of this?
I think it takes us back to the hypocrisy of the Biden administration, who campaigned, especially in black communities, that they were going to speak to this issue of student loan debt, partly responding to Brother Bernie's campaign. Bernie wanted to cancel it across the board. They said, no, we can steal some of the thunder from the Bernie campaign, and that we're going to address this issue so that folk won't get locked in, especially young, precious students. He extended it. We got excited. He extended it, got excited. Now it's clear they're not going to extend it, which means that a disproportionate burden will fall on black students, even though we're concerned about students across the board. And keep in mind, my brother, they just passed a $768 billion defense bill where they got more jets than they wanted. They got more ships than they wanted. And yet they can't find the compassion. They can't find the political leadership to try to cancel some of this student debt. It's a hypocritical situation. And you got some Democrats like Elizabeth and Bernie and a few others who are concerned about this, but not enough. And probably most of the Democrats will cave in and kowtow to the Biden administration. And these poor students are going to get overburdened once again, though, brother. They're going to fall through the cracks.
Right. You know, the press secretary is being slightly disingenuous there. She says this has been under review and she has nothing to report today. But, you know, Biden asked the Department of Education to prepare a memo about whether or not he has the authority to do this under the Higher Education Act. He asked in April. They gave him that memo in April. He has yet to release the contents of that memo for them to say, well, he doesn't know, it's under review and we have nothing to report. No, actually we do have something to report. We're choosing not to report it because he has this memo and has had it since April. Do you believe that Biden just doesn't want to do this or take, you know, the hit for doing it himself and pitch it over to Congress where it has no shot? If Manchin is not going to go along with Build Back Better in its provisions, if he's not going to go along with, you know, expanding, protecting voter rights, how's he going to do this? So it's basically pitching it back over to Congress basically kills it.
That's right. Well, you're absolutely right. But you see, that is what we've seen for neoliberal leadership. We saw it from Clinton, we saw it from Obama, we see it from Biden, where they won't fight. You see, they want to punt on second down rather than the fourth down. They don't want to really do all that they can to fight for something on principle that would actually alleviate the suffering, in this case, of students. They'll give a gesture like they're moving in a certain progressive direction, and then the next moment they fall right back. We see the same thing with the filibuster when it comes to voting rights suppression. Similar things with gerrymandering. We see it with journalism, with our dear brother Julian Assange. Right. Oh, we're for free press at the Summit on Democracy, and did somebody who was criminalized for engaging in standard journalistic practices of revealing crimes with American empire in terms of dropping drones on innocent folk. The hypocrisy is overwhelming, and unfortunately, and this is what you pointed out in that powerful piece of yours in the New York Times on the issues of Civil War, John Calhoun, and how we see parallels. Neo-fascists are growing every day, and they're growing partly because of the milquetoast quality of neoliberals like the Biden administration that leads people to lose trust in the capacity of government to do anything. And you end up with gangsters, the neo-fascists and Trump and company, acting as if they can do something because these neoliberals are so weak and don't want to follow through. And it's a very sad situation. We're going to end up losing our democracy over these kind of issues, my brother.
The Education Trust released a survey recently showing that 60% of black graduates regret having taken out educational loans that they now see as unpayable and not worth it. You know, are these black graduates basically just being left out to dry in this back and forth about whether or not, you know, Biden can do it on his own or whether or not he wants to pitch it back over to Congress, and basically them, both areas basically letting it die?
Well, I think you characterize it so rightly. See, there's a sense in which, you know, college education, especially the most important college education, which in many ways is community colleges. Really, I learned this from my beloved wife. She's a community professor. Community colleges, that's the last lifeline. You see, 32% of Americans go to college, so over 68% don't go. A lower percentage of black folk go to college. A higher percentage don't go. So the poor and working class who disproportionately don't go to college at all have hardly any lifeline at all because they don't have access to college. Then college comes along, especially community college comes along, provides a lifeline. But then the average black student ends up with over $30-some thousand as a loan in a public university or college, meaning that even if they go to college, they're going to be overburdened, and the least we could do is to lessen their burden by canceling those loans or at least alleviating most of those loans. And if we're not willing to do that, then we just, you know, we talk in empty rhetoric when we talk about our commitment to black students, our commitment to black education. And unfortunately, that's what we're hearing right now from the Biden administration. They're telling us how committed they are, but when it's time to execute, hardly a deed. Now, if you want to see how they execute, look how they execute with jets and ships and billions of dollars they didn't even ask. They give extra money for that. That's warped priorities. That's what Brother Martin Luther King called warped values. Militarism is highlighted over high quality education. And it's a sad thing to see, my brother. We just have to point it out.
Dr. Corneille West, thank you so much for joining us. A pleasure as always.
The standoff is one of the more noticeable splits between President Joe Biden and the members of his party, who are applying intense pressure to provide more borrower relief as the expiration of a pandemic-era freeze nears. But y'all know the Omnichrome variant just hit, right? And allegedly is spreading like crazy. And how is that going to come into effect, you know? Because at first they were saying, you know, the economy was recovering, you know, after the Delta variant, blah, blah, blah. But now we got this new variant. And they're talking about children not going back to school, people not going back into the office. How is this going to affect student loans? Is this going to cause Joe Biden to put another freeze on student loan debt? I don't know. Possibly. We just have to wait and see how this sickness moves about the country. What's good, YouTube? This is RPU here, and I'm back again with another video. And guys, did we call it or what? When your eyes are open you can see things happening before they actually happen, man. I seen this from a mile away. The Biden administration extends student loan pause through May 1st, but advocates call for all student debts to be canceled. U.S. President Joe Biden speaks about the Omnichrome variant of the coronavirus in the state dining room of the White House, December 21st, 2021, in Washington, D.C. Today, the U.S. Department of Education announced a 90-day extension on the pause on student loan repayment, interest, and collections through May 1st, 2022. The extension will allow the administration to assess the impacts of the Omicron variant on student borrowers and provide additional time for borrowers to plan for the resumption of payments and reduce the risk of delinquency and defaults after restart, according to the Department of Education. This is good. This is good for people who need more time to get themselves together. This is, the freeze is going to be continued, so that means you're going to have zero interest until May 2022. So take advantage. If you can make a big payment, that could help you, because that interest occurs daily, and hopefully they will really assess the effects of this new sickness going about the country, because people are talking about, workers not going back into the office, children not going back to school, everything going to be online. This is why we're talking about the metaverse. We've seen that corporations are creating workspaces in Decentraland for their workers to meet up and have meetings in the digital world. This is crazy. And so all of this has to be considered when they talk about freezing, extending the freeze and or cancellation. But many of those who called for the moratorium to be extended said pausing student loan payments is not enough. They should be canceled. Yes, that would be lovely. That would be lovely. The extension is a major win for 45 million student debtors and their families. Braxton Brewington, a spokesperson for the Debt Collective, a national union for debt holders, said in a statement sent to CNBC Make It. For at least a few months, struggling families will be able to keep tens of billions of dollars in their pockets and have zero interest, man. So take advantage, man. I know I'm going to try to make a couple payments over these next couple of months. However, a pause should just be the first step in addressing the student loan crisis, Brewington says. Next, the Biden administration should permanently relieve this financial burden on families and the economy by using his executive authority to eliminate all federal student debt, he says. All federal student debt. With the stroke of a pen, Biden can dramatically boost the economy, narrow the racial wealth gap, and keep a key campaign promise, and deliver a much-needed jubilee for the 99%. Man, a debt jubilee like no other, man. You know how much this could boost the economy? You know how many young adults, if they had their student loans canceled, their credit scores would shoot up, and they would be able to purchase their first home and be able to get on with their life and possibly get married and have children and live the American dream like they want to, But student loans continue to hold us down. So politicians who advocated for the pause to be extended, such as Senator Elizabeth Warren, celebrated the announcement but called for broad-based student loan cancellation on social media. I'm deeply grateful for everyone who joined this fight, called on the administration to extend the pause, and got this done, tweeted Warren. Raising your voice matters. It's how we make change, and it's how we're going to take the next step to hashtag cancel student debt. I'm with it. Cancel student debt. Cancel student debt. If they can really cancel it, that would be amazing. Huge news for student loan borrowers, tweeted Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. We must get through this pandemic, and we must hashtag cancel student debt. See, they're on a campaign. They're really on a campaign to get student loan debt canceled. House and Senate Democrats have repeatedly urged President Joe Biden to broadly forgive up to $50,000 of federal debt through executive order. $50,000, that's a lot of money for each person. I mean, that would cover my entire student loan completely. Biden has consistently indicated that he will only support up to $10,000 of debt forgiveness and that he would prefer Congress craft the legislation. It currently appears unlikely that Congress would pass such a measure. But if you watch the clip in the beginning, they said that the Department of Education wrote a memo and sent it to Biden in April on whether or not Joe Biden has the executive authority to cancel student loans. Why hasn't Joe Biden released the memo? Why hasn't he released the memo? It was given to him in April. Does he have the power to cancel them? Or does he not have the power to cancel them? And he says that he would rather prefer Congress to craft the legislation. You know, if Congress really wanted to cancel student loans, somebody would introduce a bill. You know, Democrats have majority in the House, the Senate, and they have the presidency. So if they really wanted to cancel student loans, they have the ability to do so. Somebody should introduce a bill. People should be calling their local Congress people to get them to introduce a bill to cancel student loan debt. If this is true, you know, everybody's just talking about it, but nobody's putting any action towards this. Somebody introduce a bill already. Since March 27th, 2020, payments on federal student loan payments have been paused and federal student loan interest rate has been set to 0. This student loan moratorium was previously set to expire January 31st, 2022, and payments were set to resume February 1st. Recently, hundreds of organizations such as the American Civil Liberties Union, the American Federation of Teachers, the NAACP, and the Student Borrower Protection Center asked President Biden to extend the pause, arguing that borrowers and servicers are not prepared for loan payments to resume. If you've seen in the first video, they said 89% of borrowers are unprepared to resume payments come February, and an estimated 9 million people are expected to default on their student loans. That's a lot of people. A lot of people whose credit is going to be affected dramatically. Dramatically, man. Dramatically. Having a default on your student loans is like almost as bad as like a foreclosure on a home, you know? The credit game is no joke. I mean, it could be a blessing and it could be a curse. And so, and not only that, you know, black students have twice as much debt as their white counterparts. So this would disproportionately affect black students, you know? And due to the fact that Biden said that black voters overwhelmingly voted to, you know, put him in office, this would possibly mess up his, you know, political stance with the black community because it would have a major effect on them. So in order to prevent political harakiri, you know, Joe Biden extended it. Man. These concerns have now been exacerbated by the Omnichrome variant, which is expected to impact workers and borrowers across the country. The Department of Education estimates that the pause on federal student loan payments allows 41 million borrowers to save $5 billion per month. That's a lot of money. President Biden and Vice President Harris threw a lifeline to tens of millions of people with student debt, ensuring a student loan bill will not add to the financial burden posed by rising inflation and a resurgent pandemic. It seems like it's never going to end. You know? How are people going to be able to pay all of this back if the sickness is going about the country and more jobs are going to have to close down and more people lose their jobs and they don't have the income to pay it back? You know? The wages are not keeping up with inflation. The cost of rent is skyrocketing. It's crazy. And the cost of living is going up, and then on top of that, you got student loans, credit card bills, healthcare. It's like people are drowning in debt. This is an enormous relief for families who would have been forced to choose between paying student loan bills and putting food on the table this winter, said Mike Pierce, executive director of the SBPC. Although we commend the administration for delivering this necessary short-term relief to people with student debt, we continue to advocate for the extension of the pause on student loan payments until the end of the COVID-19 national emergency, giving the Department of Education time to fix the broken student loan system and finally keep the president's promise to cancel student debt. It sounds like they're trying. I mean, it sounds like they're really out here campaigning as far as trying. Somebody should be introducing a bill already. Or if Joe Biden has the power through executive authority to do so, he should sign an executive order to get student loans canceled. And so I'm asking my viewers, if you have student loan debt, you should call your local congressman and ask them, why aren't they introducing a bill to at least get $10,000 canceled for right now? The Democrats have majority House, Senate, and the presidency. They could just ram it through if they wanted to, like they did, everything, other things. And so, if you have student loan debt, you can breathe a sigh of relief for now, for a couple of months. You can, use this time to get back on your feet and start to get ready to start making payments, because you can only kick the can down the road for so long. They're going to keep trying to kick the can down the road, but eventually these bills are going to come due unless they cancel it. And like I said, you can't really depend on the system. It would be nice if they could cancel student loan debt, but I'm not depending on them to cancel student loan debt. That's the difference. And so this is the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're getting yourself together, surviving and thriving in these crazy times and getting out of debt. This is RPU, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.